It is October 31st as I record this, Halloween, and I have some spooky news for you. Your money is fake. Your dollar is going to zero. That's what we're going to talk about today, fake money and why fiat currencies are going to zero. I said your dollar, this is true for the British pound, it is true for any fiat currency in the world today. They're all going to zero. Now, here on the table, I brought different kinds of money to show you. I have some silver coins, some gold coins, some seashells. Shells have been used as money in the past. And inside the box, I have a surprise for you. Inside the box is something that is worth $1 million. I'm going to open the box at the end of the video. I'm going to show you the $1 million inside. But first, we're going to talk about some things. We're going to talk about fiat currency, why it's fake, why I think it's going to zero. In fact, I don't just think, I know that it is going to zero eventually. I can't tell you when. I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow or next year or 5 years from now, but I would guess that within my lifetime, and hopefully I still have a few decades left of life, I believe that all fiat currencies, they are going to nothing. Now, this isn't just something that I made up, it's based on real mathematics. We know that since the US dollar went off the gold standard in 1971, the US dollar has lost 99% of its value. That means it's lost 99% of its purchasing power over all this time. And today we still have massive inflation. Fiat currencies are losing roughly 6 to 7% of their purchasing power every year. Now, I know that the official CPI numbers say that it's only between 2 to 3%. I would argue that it's more like 7 or 8%. I did a whole other video about this. We're not going to get into that too much here. But whether they're losing 3% a year or 7% a year, they're still losing a lot of value. They've already lost 99% of their value. We are really just down to the last 1%, and that is dropping fast. Whether it goes to zero in 10 years or 20 years, it's gone. The system is failing. It's already failed. This is the end game. This is the collapse. It's here. And I'm going to talk about why I am switching to other forms of money that I think are going to last forever. Now, I want to talk to you about why I said that the dollar is fake, why I said that fiat currencies are fake. And I don't just mean that they're losing value. I mean that in a sense, they don't exist at all. These fiat currencies are not backed by anything. They're not based on anything tangible. They are just numbers on a computer screen. That's all they are. In a sense, they're air. If I go to the bank, for example, if I go to the bank and I want a mortgage, I want to borrow $1 million to buy a house. That's about the price of houses in Canada today. This is in Canadian dollars. In the United States, they're probably a little bit cheaper. But where I live, a house costs about $1 million Canadian dollars. If I want to go buy a house, I can go to the bank and I can say, lend me $1 million. And they will, they'll lend it to me. Now, when I was a little kid, I remember thinking that the bank probably has a big vault somewhere in the back full of dollars, whether it's cash dollars, whether it's, precious metals. Whatever it was, I thought that the bank actually has the money there. And that's because when you watch movies as a kid, when the bank robbers go into the bank teller is actually stuffing these big sacks full of dollars, and they have a big dollar sign on the outside of the sack, and the burglars can run off with it. So I thought that at least they have, if they don't have the gold, at least they have paper money there at the bank. The truth is that they don't. If I go into the bank and borrow $1 million and they'll approve me for a loan, they'll type on their screen, we are lending Marco Meadows $1 million. And at that moment, as soon as they typed it into their form and hit enter, those $1 million were created out of thin air. They did not exist until I asked for the loan. They did not have them in any vault in the bank. They do not exist at Fort Knox. They exist nowhere. They were invented on the spot. Those $1 million just poofed into existence out of thin air. And that's why I say that this money is just air. It's not based on anything. Now, I can take this $1 million and I can buy someone's house. That person who sold me the house has $1 million now. They can go buy a car. They can buy whatever they want with the money. So the money has entered the system and it has increased the money supply. So there are now 1 million more dollars in existence, diluting all the dollars that are already in the system. And banks do that all day long, every branch around the country, day in, day out. They are giving out loans. They are creating millions, billions, trillions of dollars out of thin air. It's not just the banks that are doing this, governments are doing this as well. The US government, the Canadian government, the Japanese government, they're all doing this all day long. They are printing more money and they are diluting the supply of dollars or whatever other currency we're talking about that is already out there in existence. You can look at the charts of the M2 money supply in the United States, for example. You can see that at the turn of the century, in the year 2000, there were only about $4 trillion in circulation. Today, there are over 22 trillion. So within just 25 years, we went from $4 trillion in circulation to $22 trillion. Those $18 trillion that were added, they were just printed out of thin air. They are air. They don't exist. They are made up. That's why I think that this money is all fake. It's not based on anything. It's not real. There is no vault in the government. There is no vault in the bank that's full of these sacks of dollars with a US dollar written on the outside of the sack. It doesn't exist. So that's why I prefer to save my wealth. I say wealth as if I'm wealthy. I'm not. I'm just a regular guy. But whatever little wealth I do have, I try to save it in other forms of money, namely gold and silver, because gold and silver, they will last forever. They have lasted for thousands of years. They have lasted the fall of empires. They have lasted revolutions. They have lasted world wars, famines, whatever the world gave us, whatever happened in the history of humanity. For some reason, we always go back to gold and silver. This system that we have right now with fiat currency, it can't last forever. It at some point will just collapse. That's because the levels of debt in the world are so high. Just the interest on debt repayment in the United States, I believe it's the third largest budget item right now. So it's ahead of defense just to pay off the debt. And how do they pay off this debt? They just print more money. And they dilute the dollars that are already out there, and they borrow more money, and they go deeper into debt, and the snowball of debt and money printing just keeps growing and growing. At this point, it seems impossible to roll back. At some point, the system is just going down. I don't know when. It might not be tomorrow, it might not be next year. We might have another 20 years left. I don't know. But at some point, this is unsustainable. The whole thing is going down like a house of cards. And when that happens, I want to have gold and silver because I believe that this gold and silver is going to last. It's still going to be valuable because these coins are real. They are hard, tangible assets. Look at this. This is 2 ounces of silver. Here is a 1/4 ounce of gold. These metals don't care about what we humans do. They don't care if we print another $22 trillion. They're still going to be here. They're still going to be valuable. And how do I know this? Just because I've looked at history. You can go all the way back to the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire did the exact same thing we're doing today. They took their real silver coins. That's what they use as currency, silver coins and gold coins. And what they did is they debased the currency. And the word debase comes from base metal. So they took silver coins and they reduced the amount of actual silver in it, and they put base metals in them, cheap metals instead. And I brought an example to show you. This is not a Roman coin, this is a modern Canadian coin, but it is exactly the same principle. This is a nickel. Now we still call it a nickel, there isn't even nickel in it. This coin is made out of steel. So basically the amount of metal in this, the raw material in this coin, is worth virtually nothing. They've debased our currencies. The United States has done this as well. Many countries have done this. The UK did it as well. That's why even today, the British currency, the basic unit is called a pound sterling. That comes from the day when the unit of currency was a pound of sterling silver. Today, we don't even use debased coins anymore. How often do you use coins to buy things? Today, people just use numbers on a screen. So we went really just within the past few decades, from using real silver coins to using base metal coins, and now we're phasing away base metal coins and we're just using numbers on a computer screen. The ancient Romans never got to the stage of using fake money on computer screens. They didn't have computers, but they did debase their coins by removing the silver content and replacing it with base metals. And those coins today are worthless. I suppose that they're worth something for collectors. If you're into numismatics, into history, maybe you'll buy the coin for that reason. But for the Roman citizen, after the system collapsed, if he had a bunch of base metal coins, they couldn't buy much. But if you were a Roman and you kept the original silver coins, this is not a Roman coin, but it's made out of exactly the same silver, those were still worthwhile because they still had a precious metal in them. And we've seen this throughout history, repeating itself again and again. In the Middle Ages, Spain did the same thing. They had gold and silver as their currency. They debased it. The system collapsed. Weimar Germany, the same thing. In Weimar Germany, we all know the story, how their currency collapsed. It went down to zero. If you had gold and silver in Germany, you were okay. Those are just 3 examples. This has happened many, many times over the past few thousand years. It is happening again today. The cycle repeats itself. So today, in pretty much everywhere in the world, because the system is all interconnected, the system of money in the United States, in Canada, and Europe, everywhere in the world, it's all interconnected today. We've debased our currencies, we switched to air, and the only thing that is going to survive is silver and gold. It is hard for people to grasp this because we tend to think in short time spans. We tend to think in time spans of weeks or months, maybe a decade. This is a change that takes a few decades, and that is good because it gives us time to prepare. It gives us time to buy the gold and silver. Now we have an interesting opportunity these days. We can take air into the coin shop, and with air, we can buy real silver, we can buy real gold, and get real money. So what I do is I keep enough dollars to pay my bills, I keep enough dollars to pay my taxes, to buy food, but if I have anything left over at the end of the month, I will take it to the coin shop, I'll buy what I can. If I can't afford gold some month, because these gold coins obviously are very expensive, the price of gold is very high. If I can't afford gold a certain month, I'll try to at least buy a silver coin or 2. If you can do the same, you don't have to save a lot. You don't have to buy huge stacks. But my recommendation is try to save a little bit in gold and silver because that money will last forever. Now let's talk about some of the other items here on the table. We have seashells. Very beautiful things, actually. Seashells are quite nice to collect. I have a few of them around the house. Here's another beautiful seashell. I'm showing you these seashells because these have actually been used as money in the past. There have been ancient cultures that used seashells as money. Now, this didn't last very long because, as you can imagine, anyone could just walk to the beach, collect more seashells, and become wealthy. So they had to do something a little bit more complicated, a little bit more difficult to acquire. They began to use silver and gold. The ancient Lydians minted the first golden coins. This was around 500 BC, and the system has worked pretty well since then. For 2,500 years, we'd be using silver and gold coins, but the history of silver and gold is much, much older than that. We've been using gold nuggets, gold jewelry, gold bracelets for thousands of years before the Lydians. And we'll probably use them, if we survive, we'll probably use them after the next big crash, after the next big reset. At some point, we'll have to create a new system. At some point, when fiat collapses, they'll create a new system of money. They'll have something similar to the Bretton Woods Agreement, where people are going to come from all over the world and sit down and discuss and come up with a new system. I have no idea what they're going to come up with, but I know that my gold and silver are still going to be valuable, and whatever new currency they invent after the current ones collapse, I'll be able to sell some of my silver, sell some of my gold, get enough of the new currency to keep living, to keep paying my bills, and hopefully still have some gold and silver saved for the future. So remember guys, the dollars that we're using, any fiat currency that we're using, it's fake. It's like the example I gave you. You could walk into the bank, they give you $1 million. They just made it up. The bank teller just made up $1 million on the spot, tapped the button, and now we all pretend that this is $1 million that actually exists and we can go and buy things with it. And the way that the system works is just because we all pretend. We're all sharing the same delusion. So the bank pretends that it gave me $1 million. I pretend that I have $1 million. I buy a house. The person I bought a house from, they pretend that I gave them $1 million. They take it to the store. The store pretends that they're getting real dollars from that guy. So on and so forth. We're all just pretending. But it's not real. Remember, the bank made it up. They invented $1 million on the spot. They're not based on anything tangible. They're not based on anything at all. It's just a story that we all believe in. And the system can only last so long as we all believe in this story. But all it takes is enough people like me, like you, when we realize that this is fake, we realize that it's just make-believe, and once enough people see that the money is not there, the whole system of trust collapses. It's very similar to the story of the Emperor's New Clothes, which you've probably heard. If you haven't heard the story, very briefly, there is a folktale of an emperor who wanted the finest clothes in the land. And there was a tailor who traveled into town. He wasn't even a tailor. He was just a con man. He passed himself off as a tailor. And he said to the emperor, I have the finest fabric in the land, but it is a very special fabric. You have to be intelligent to see it. If you're not intelligent, if you're stupid, then it is invisible to you. So of course the emperor pretended that he could see the fabric. He wanted to pretend that he's smart. So he said, oh yeah, yes, I see it. It looks quite beautiful. And the tailor, who was actually a con man, he pretended to make the emperor a wondrous new outfit. The emperor put it on, and of course all the people in his court, no one wanted to appear foolish. So they all pretended to see it. They all said, oh yes, this is a beautiful garment. The fabric is lovely. Everyone wanted to appear intelligent, so they all shared in this delusion, in this story, that the clothes were real, that there was actual fabric there. Of course, there was nothing. It was just air. The king was naked. He went outside to the city and he wanted to show off his new garments to the realm. Everyone in his kingdom saw him walking around naked. Everyone pretended that the clothes were real until there was one boy. One boy pointed and said, hey, look everyone, the emperor is naked. And of course everyone laughed at the boy at first and they said, oh, you must be stupid because only intelligent people can see these magical clothes. Until a few more people said, oh, you know what, the boy is right, these clothes are not really there. The king is naked. And then everyone realized that they had been fooled. The entire realm, the king, everyone realized it was all fake. And the entire system of trust collapsed. The story collapsed. The king was revealed to be naked. And I'm not sure what the story is a metaphor for, but it works very well with fiat currencies because it is the same thing. We are all pretending that there is something here. We're pretending that fiat currency is real. We don't want to appear stupid, so we go along with the fairy tale. But at some point, enough people are going to point out that the king is naked, that fiat currency is fake. Then everything is going to collapse. These coins are still going to be here. That's why I like collecting them. I even prefer these rocks. See, I put some rocks on the table just to show you that I prefer having rocks to fiat currency because at least rocks are real. Now, gold and silver are also the only asset that does not have counterparty risk. That is very important. Think about every other asset that you own. Fiat currency, the counterparty risk is the government, it's the banks, they're the ones who are propagating the story. If they fail, if that system collapses, your dollar collapses. But this is not only true for fiat currency, it's true for things like the stock market. It's true for all sorts of fancy investments that you can buy, securities that you can buy online. There's always counterparty risk. You have to trust that the institutions are managing the money appropriately. If you're buying ETFs from BlackRock, you have to trust that BlackRock is doing a good job. that they're not going to go out of business. If you have your money in the bank, you have to trust the bank is going to stay in business. Even real estate has a counterparty risk, because while real estate is a hard asset, a house is real, land is real, that's something you can touch, there's still a counterparty risk because ownership of real estate depends on the title, and the title is given by the government. And when you have a title to a piece of real estate, in a sense, is a story that we all agree on. We all agree that there's a document somewhere that says you own this piece of land, but there is still counterparty risk even to land, because if the government decides to nationalize land or redistribute land, suddenly that story of the title that says you own this land, they can rip that story apart, they can rip the piece of paper apart. This is not something that's just pie in the sky. This has happened many times throughout history. If you look at South America, there are a lot of countries in South America. Chile is an example. They voted in socialist governments, and one of the things that they did is nationalize farmland. This has happened even in Great Britain, this has happened. In Great Britain, they used a bit of a different system. When the government wanted to raise a lot of money, they didn't nationalize land, but they just raised property taxes on land to such a ridiculous level that a lot of the wealthy families had to sell their ancient lands and their ancient estate homes. And for all intents and purposes, it was a way for the government to confiscate that land and to confiscate the ancestral homes of rich British families. So even if you have a house, even if you have land, it's great. I'm not saying don't invest in real estate. I invest in it a bit myself. But I am saying that real estate has counterparty risk as well. The only asset that I can think of that does not have any counterparty risk is gold and silver. And that's because there is no title sitting in some government office that says that I own the silver coin. I'm actually holding it in my hand right now. Nobody has to tell me that I own this gold coin. I can hold it. Now, there have been times in the past where governments have tried to nationalize gold and silver. The United States had the Gold Confiscation Act. The Soviet Union during World War II tried to nationalize and confiscate all the gold. Governments try this now and then, but it is very difficult for them to do. There isn't just like a title that they can change with the tap of a button. They would literally have to hire, tens of thousands of people and march them from house to house looking for gold and silver. That is not very realistic. In the Soviet Union, Stalin tried to do exactly that. Stalin actually sent his troops door to door, house to house, across Russia, looking for gold. What do you do in a case like that? You can just bury your gold in the backyard. You can hide it somewhere. You can lose it and then happen to find it a few years later. So it is extremely difficult for anyone to grab your gold and silver. That's why I think these are the only assets that have no counterparty risk. Now, I'm not saying put all your money in gold and silver. I'm not telling you to do anything, okay? I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not giving you advice. But what I think that is a good idea, this is what I do, is to put some of your money in gold and silver. Maybe it's 20%, maybe it's 25%. You don't have to put all of it in gold and silver, but put enough to have an asset that outlasts empires, that outlasts revolutions, that has no counterparty risk, and then you are safe. And definitely, if you have anything saved in fiat currency, bonds, whatever, savings accounts, I would just be careful. Again, I'm not telling you what to do, but be careful. Realize that fiat currencies are going to zero and plan accordingly. All right, guys, I've been talking for a while, and I promise that at the end of the video, I will show you what's inside this box, which is, of course, worth $1 million. Here we go. Let's take a look. And I have some beautiful air in this box. Beautiful air, which is worth $1 million because, hey, if the banks can print $1 million out of thin air, why not? Let's pretend that this is worth $1 million as well. If you want it, here, grab $1 million of air. I will keep my gold and silver. Thanks, guys. Remember to like, remember to give this channel a subscribe, I'll see you in the next video.